The future is now for USA Hockey. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet, bet on Betway. 19 plus, please play responsibly. My guest on this week's edition of Frankly Speaking is USA Hockey Executive Director Pat Kelleher, who's been in the role since 2017 and has presided over arguably the most successful run in international play for Team USA. I mean, consider the successes. At the World Junior level, 4 gold medals in 9 tournaments since Pat Kelleher has been at the top of the pyramid for USA Hockey, a women's Olympic gold medal, 3 women's World Championship gold medals, as well as numerous under-18 and other international play championships. All that's missing is, well, success in best on best at the men's level, something that's been haunting USA Hockey really since the 1996 World Cup of Hockey, the last time that they had prevailed. Mike Eruzione, famed captain, the man who scored the biggest goal in USA Hockey history at the 1980 Miracle on Ice, met up with Team USA here in Montreal earlier this week for a team dinner, and the message that he passed along to me afterward was, "This is the best collection of American talent that's ever been assembled on the ice at the Four Nations Faceoff here for Team USA. Yet they need to come through and win." So, in my conversation today with Pat Kelleher, we talked about that very real pressure to win for Team USA, that silver medals, such as one that were won in Salt Lake City in 2002 and also in Vancouver in 2010, that's not where the bar is for USA Hockey anymore. The US has the youngest roster in this Four Nations Face-Off, and beyond that, they're stacked with some firepower that puts them certainly on par in the talent department with Team Canada and beyond. But that wasn't all that our conversation encompassed. There was so much more than that. We talked about the changing NCAA landscape, how the game is continuing to grow at the grassroots level, and what is it about Minnesota hockey that does it so well in the state of hockey to continue to grow the game. Their numbers of participation are increasing, as plenty of spots in other hockey hotbeds around the United States where their numbers for participation are actually decreasing. We talked about the idea of a North American Super Junior Hockey League with the potential merger of the CHL and the USHL, even though that feels pretty far off in the distance. And we also talked about a newly announced formation of the National Developmental League in the United States, which would encompass 2 age groups and be a step above Tier 1 hockey. I called it Hockey with Sanity. Was fortunate enough to host Pat for our conversation at La Cage inside Bell Center just a few days ago. Here is my conversation with USA Hockey Executive Director Pat Kelleher. Pat, so great to have you join us here in Montreal. Four Nations, the vibe has been electric to start. What have been your impressions of everything so far?
Probably the biggest takeaway, Frank, is how excited our players are. I mean, legit like kids in the candy store. They are so excited to be playing in this tournament, to be back with a lot of guys they played with years and years ago, whether it was in NTDP or in college. A lot of former teammates now back together. Big smiles, stories. It's been fun. It looks like a youth hockey tournament, right? The kids are excited to play, and when you have that with the best players in the world, it's obviously we're hitting it out of the park right now.
Yeah, and just listening to the Kachucks, who were monsters in Game 1 to open this tournament against Finland, but there were a couple off days to start this tournament, just practice, and they said, "Oh no, we went back to our hotel and we were watching Miracle."
Yeah.
So when you hear that and you hear how excited they are, can you paint the scene for us of what it was like at the team dinner on Monday? Obviously, some really special guests, Guy Gaudreau, Mike Eruzione, Rob McClanahan, Mike Modano, that all show up that want to be part of this current generation of team as well.
One of my favorite things about USA Hockey as an organization is that we really know where we've come from and we recognize our past and our history, and it means something to us. So to have those guys around, right, to go from 1980 to 1996 World Cup with Mike, and then to obviously the Gaudreau family, and they're always in our hearts and prayers and minds, and a lot of these players played with Johnny, and you know,
he would have been here.
And so to have his dad around was really great. And then we had a dinner on Tuesday night with just the coaching staff and the management staff and Mr. Gaudreau as well, and that was really fun. Just great to have, I think hockey's such a special sport for people, and to engage people and connect people, bring people together, and it's been It's been great. That's almost like a cherry on top of the whole thing too,
Sure,
right?
the competition. So when you think about this tournament and all the success that the U.S. has had, you mentioned you know where you guys come from as well. Is there a certain amount of pressure that comes with this, that we've been building to this for a while and everyone's kind of been waiting for this moment when the scales tip of, international hockey supremacy so much as it can? Canada's been the 800-pound gorilla when it comes to going toe-to-toe, and everyone's excited to see it. How does USA Hockey as a whole internalize that?
We got to win at this point. Like, we get it, and I'm the first in line for it. And John Van Biesbroek, who, as you know, runs all of our international programs, John's about winning, right? Like, we've done a great job, grassroots development, all that. Obviously, on the women's side, what we do on the para sled hockey side, we're winning at those highest levels. We're winning World Juniors. We're winning U18s on the men's side. The top-level men's competition, we haven't won since 1996, and that's not acceptable for any of us. And with all that we have and all that we do, there is pressure internally in the organization. There's pressure on the players. There's pressure on the coaches, but it's healthy pressure. It's good because they want to win. Like, they didn't show up hoping to have a great tournament and have some fun with their buddies. They're here to win this thing, and they know it can be done the right way with a great culture, supportive of each other, and doing their best for USA.
Yeah, I had the honor of talking to Mike Eruzione a couple days ago just to help set up the tournament. He said this is the best collection of American talent that's ever been on the ice together. Yeah. When you think about that and what that means, and also hearing it come from him, who's part of the greatest team ever, which is a totally kind of different thing because we know their story, when you reflect back on how we've gotten here, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Like, what do you think about?
Well, again, I was a 9-year-old kid in 1980, so that's always the first thing I think about is a miracle on ice, right? For my generation, people were inspired of that, not just hockey players, but obviously the impact in hockey was tremendous. Then you look at our general manager. Billy's about a year younger than me. He was the same way, a kid that was impacted by that, then goes on to have an NHL career and an international career, and part of that 96 World Cup team. Is obviously one of his teammates, got a couple of sons on our team now. So there's those checkpoints on the men's side, the 80 team, what that did, the 96 team.
I was going to say, for me, growing up in Philly, I went to those 96 World Cup of hockey games. Those are the best hockey I'd ever seen. There's a whole generation of players that were brought in to the game because of that and what they watched.
And we've been right there, right? I mean, for a long time. You go back, so 96 we win the World Cup. 98 was a struggle for everybody in Nagano. 2002, U.S.-Canada in the gold medal game. Had a great game, and Canada just came out better on top that day. 06 was tough. 2010, the whatever.
The golden goal.
We can say that, it, not me. So we've been right there, and it's just getting over that hump because it's happened all the way up. And again, we've had a lot of great players, a lot of great teams along the way, and I do think, and you'll hear like Billy Guerin would say it, who's part of a pretty good generation of players with Modano and Amante and Roenick and all those guys. We think we're deeper, stronger, more elite players all along the way, forward, D, goaltending. So it's we just got to deliver, and I think everybody feels that. Like, it's, hey, it is our time. We've been building and building and building, and we just have to have that one to get us over the top at the highest level on the men's side.
Yeah, the health of the game in this country, but also in the U.S., I think the biggest marker for me is watching this tournament and seeing the U.S. being the youngest team, but then also taking a look at some of the players, unfortunately, that didn't make this team. When you get to a level as a Team USA that you can leave off of Jason Robertson, not to use him as an example, but a guy who's a 50-goal, 100-plus point scorer in the NHL and he doesn't make it, that's how good your team is. That's how level that you've gotten to as a program. So let's talk about another part of this, how we've gotten here, the grassroots part of it. Yeah. It's been really interesting to watch some of the participation numbers, and I want to start with a positive. When some other, we've seen explosive growth, first off at the women's side, the level of participation is off the charts and how that's grown in the last decade plus. But other areas, the Southwest, Florida, California, great numbers. The one that stands out to me is Minnesota because it just continues to grow and grow and grow. What is it about Minnesota? Why are they doing it better than anyone else?
I would say they have the deepest hockey culture and tradition in our country, right? And their model is really around points towards high school hockey, which is a great path for kids and players. Now, some kids leave and do that, but they have community-based programs because they have a rink in every community. right? There's not many places around the country. I'm from Massachusetts. We have a lot of facilities. It's changed a little bit there in Mass. Minnesota really has that community tradition, that culture that points towards high school. So those kids that grow up in Edina, they want to play for Edina High School, and they see them in the XL Energy Center playing, and it's a big thing. Again, there's different steps along the way in Minnesota. The second thing is for our affiliate in Minnesota, Minnesota Hockey. Yes, they're the biggest affiliate in USA Hockey. They have the most players, but they just don't sit back. They are aggressive. They are going out to try and grow the game, get more kids playing, get more communities engaged, do a great job at the elite level. So not just at the high school level, but in the off season, in the fall season, they do programs that help kids that are at that higher level play more meaningful hockey in the front end of the season, then go into their high school season where they have the resources, they have practice every day, they have their own rink, they have all that great stuff, and they just build on it. So I think Minnesota Hockey as an organization, for us as part of USA Hockey, does a great job of developing players in Minnesota, and they care about it. And on the girls' side, they're just as strong and as deep, right, as they are on the men's side. Mm-hmm. You've got college hockey there. They kind of have everything. And then you get the Wild, right, as a one of the stronger franchises in the NHL. And so it all kind of fits. They have everything there, which is great, and it's unique, right?
The
Not
state of
everybody has
hockey,
that.
they live up to the moniker.
They live up to the moniker, and they don't rest on it either. I think that's most important, right? They could say, oh, there'll be more 6-year-olds that show up at the rink next year. They go out and find more 6-year-olds to invite them to the rink so that the culture is pervasive. And it's not just the families that grew up in hockey. They're bringing families that didn't grow up in hockey. I have a friend from Chicago who lives there with her husband. They have, I think, a 10 or 11-year-old daughter, and they are nuts about hockey. And I know when she was growing up, she had nothing to do with it. She didn't grow up in Minnesota. Now she's like 100% in because they're part of the community. It's a big part of what they do up there. So it's great.
So I want to pull at that thread, though, because in other districts in other states, Michigan, Massachusetts, the Atlantic District, the numbers are down slightly over a 10-year span. It feels to me, just having also a small role as a parent and coach, that there's maybe a bit of catering toward the elite player. That maybe that's one thing also to highlight for Minnesota. You touched on it with the 6-year-olds and others coming in.
Yeah.
Is that just an access thing? Meaning we're always looking for different ways for people to access the game, and the Goals and Dreams program and the Learn to Play programs that have been fantastic. Like you in my area, you say you want to play hockey, the Flyers and their Learn to Play program will outfit you head to toe and give you 8 sessions to learn about it. But it's not just about that. It's about rinks.
Yep.
And ability to get on the ice. Is there something to that other districts can pull from Minnesota or learn from to say, how do we then also cater to the high school player and the house league player and the limited travel player, as opposed to just focusing on the elite AAA 14-year-old?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of those things, to be fair. You know, in Massachusetts, there's definitely more privately run rinks as businesses than there are in Minnesota. So that does change a little bit. We, as USA Hockey and Mass Hockey is our affiliate out there, have to continue to work with those entrepreneurs, right? And the really good ones that run successful rinks and businesses, they have a wide base, right? I think sometimes it can be, I don't know if easy is the right, but sometimes, they just care about the Tier 1 or the AAA. But the ones that are really successful have a wide base, right? They have a strong Learn to Play program. They have lots of kids playing at 8 and under, because when you get to 13, 14, you want to have a group that, hey, they're elite and they want to play and they can stay close to home or wherever they're at. But you also want to have those kids that, hey, I'm 13, 14, I love hockey, but I'm not all in, so I want to play
basketball,
lacrosse, I want to do whatever, and have opportunities. And that's something that it can be challenging, right? Because you have to build that base. And I think that's where we always look at it is, age 6 and under, age 8 and under. How can we get more kids into the structure, into hockey, and have them become hockey players? In some places, I think we've done a good job of switching a lot of this, but some places it's, hey, kid and family signs up for hockey, they're in, we're going to make them a hockey player in their first 6 months in the sport, and they're not ready for that. So how do we continue to have opportunities for families to get involved in hockey and be involved in hockey, and then grow into being a hockey family or a hockey kid?
Because so many parents are overwhelmed, right? They're like, look at this big commitment that I have to make. It's not just equipment, it's practice. It's all these things that come with it that I'm sure some people shy away because they say, oh, well, there's only kind of, you're traveling every weekend and you're doing that maybe that's another point.
Yeah, and it's true. It's absolutely the biggest things we always hear back and we survey and we ask questions all the time. It's cost obviously is a factor in our sport. No way to shy around that. It's expensive, and we continue to work on that, especially in the grassroots side, the league and the PA, learn to play, all that stuff. But then the second is commitment. And people, once they get invested into the sport and their kid, the kid shows that they love it, they're willing to make that investment in their child because of, I don't know if you saw the Jeff Daniels clip that went around this week. He's a hockey parent.
About
the time in the car you have with your kid. I lived it with my kids, and it's something special about our sport. I lived it growing up. I have 4 younger brothers. We all played hockey, and it was time with our father. It was time with our mother, like running around rinks, and then with other families, right? And everybody's it's a community, and you're invested. And my mother has the best line ever. She had 5 sons play hockey, right? Imagine that. Everybody played somewhere in college, and her biggest thing, she would sign up and do it all over again tomorrow. And to me, because she always says, these are our friends. These are the people we socialize with. Because it was all around hockey. And those are the experiences we want people to have and enjoy, and have that same reaction that, oh my goodness, I would do that again all over, because it's fun. It's not, hey, well, that kid might take my kid's spot, right? It's, hey, we're part of a team, we're part of a community, and how do we as USA Hockey make sure those are the experiences that people have in our game?
You also mentioned the business part of it, and it is big business, being in the rink business, being in the youth hockey business. It's become, in a lot of ways, more for-profit than non-profit. How the heck do we get more municipal rinks?
It's a significant challenge, and I don't know that we're going back there. I mean, we wish we could.
It's expensive. If you're a local municipality, and I'm not even talking about in a hockey hotbed, how do you then convince people to say, let's invest $4, $6, $8, $10 million to build a rink? It's hard to do.
It's very hard to do, and it's challenging, and so we have to be very cognizant of those municipalities and those rinks that invest in their community, and how do we help them run. I mean, even all the rinks in Minnesota I was talking about, those are municipal rinks, but they're being asked to run like a business too. It's not a charity, right? They have to make enough money to keep the facility open. They may get some investment from the community. But the other thing is, and we've talked about this in the past, I mean, there's the entrepreneurs that make a successful business in hockey. Most of them are still providing a great product, right? We have to continue to find ways to work with those entrepreneurs who invest in running a business. How do we help them make that business be more successful, right? How does USA Hockey, I mentioned earlier, Hockey Week Across America is this week, February 17 to 23. It'll culminate for us, or for me personally, I always say it, Saturday's Track Every Free Day, right? We'll bring close to 10,000 kids to rinks across the country on one day. And that helps business. It helps our sport, no doubt. And again, I mean, I think we all know it, right? Whatever it is, there's business aspects to it. So for us, it's how do we grow the game? How do we get more kids and families invested in our game? Because we want to grow fandom. We want to grow popularity of our sport. We want people watching these guys that are playing in the Four Nations. We want to watch them playing for the Bruins or the Wild or the Golden Gophers or the Quinnipiac Bobcats or whoever they're playing for, whether it's the men's side or the women's side. And there's so many opportunities in our game that we have to continue to promote that and bring people into our game, right? And I think that's something that we've been focused on at USA Hockey for a long time. It really, probably 15, 16 years ago with our partnership with the NHL. And hey, we got to get more people into this game. We got to make the game more welcoming, more inclusive, more diverse, because it's such a great game. And I want more people to have the experience that my parents had with me and my brothers, because that's what the game's all about.
What a great message from your mom. Let's talk about a big source of pride and a big feeder to this tournament in the National Team Development Program. I'll call it NTDP for short, because that's how everyone refers to it, in case you're wondering why I'm referencing it. What's the next iteration? What's the next step for the NTDP? What more can you bolt on to make that program even better?
I think what it is what we've done from the beginning, right? And that was 1996. It was before I was at USA Hockey when it started, but the visionaries back then, and there's been a lot of great talk about the NTDP this week, of course, with 15 guys in our Four Nations team that played at the NTDP.
Which creates a really cool culture for this team, because some guys played together for a couple years before even moving on to college or whatever they ended up playing on their path to pro hockey. Makes this awesome.
For sure. No, it's great. And I've heard some of them telling some stories. I've shared some stories that I know about some of our players when they were at TDP, because when they were with us there, they were 16, 17, 18 years old, right? So they were kids. And now they're professional superstar athletes, which is awesome. But I think one of the things that's always been thought of is that the NTDP would lift all boats, right? It would rise everybody in hockey. And if you look at, I mean, you know the USHL, the things they do in the USHL, like we're churning out players from that league too. And I think one of the things that we've really focused on probably in the last, really it was just before, frankly, before COVID. I think everything's like pre-COVID or after COVID, right? We went back in and looked at what we were doing off ice with our players at the NTDP, training, load management from physical exertion, all things like that, brought better and more sports science to it. And we've tried to share that across elite programs. And I think, you probably see it with your son. You go to grassroots rinks, community rinks, kids are doing off-ice workouts before they go to their on the ice with their hockey team at 9, 10, 11, 12. And they're not in the weight room, whatever, but they're doing, body weight stuff. They're doing running, jumping, physical activity to help them be better at hockey. Now, is that better where they play at the NTDP? Or is it better where they play in the USHL? Maybe, maybe not. But
maybe this is one
active.
way that it did display itself. I forget the slogan, but I think John Van Biesbroek has a little line that he uses that just maybe helped this World Junior team recently. You guys spent a month together, but so did Canada. And all I heard from Team Canada after they bowed out of the tournament was, our guys were tired. Really? You guys had the best hotel, the best schedule, the best everything, and yet you guys lost. But it seems like the U.S. got a little bit stronger as that tournament went along, and it might come back to some of the things that you guys have picked up from NTDP. Am I wrong?
Nope, you're not. I'll only comment about
slogan?
our team.
What does he say? I forget.
Well, I'm trying to think which one. I mean, at the NTDP, we always say take responsibility for your development.
Okay.
Right.
I'm
think,
blanking on it.
Yeah, I think with our group, we've done one other thing off ice, right? There's off ice, the physical part, which 100% are Brian Gallivan, who works with us, GVN, he does all of our training at the NTDP. He does most of these Four Nations guys come back to Plymouth now to our arena in the summer to train with Brian and his staff at our building, which is great. But Brian managed this, and he works with the coaches. Hey, you know what? Today we joke about it. If Brian says, hey, we need 47 minutes on the ice of exertion, the coaches go, all right, we'll do 47 minutes because that's what our guys need. So we look at that stuff, right? So that's important to us. It gives us hopefully a competitive advantage. And what John has done the past few years is, work with an outside organization. It was Respect in Sport. I think it's Headversity now in the U.S. And the team gets together and they develop a charter of how they want to live and act as a team. And it's not John telling them what to do. It's the players on the team talking amongst themselves. They're led on certain exercise and whatever. What's the culture you want to build? What's the culture you want to build? And if Frank goes out of line, Pat's going to hold you accountable, right? It's not. David Carl's an amazing coach, right, that we've had for the last 2 years. But they set the culture. The players live up to it. They keep each other in line on it. And again, that forms that bond and means something even more to play for USA, play for your country, and play to win gold medals.
So you mentioned the USHL, and obviously the NTDP participates in the USHL as well. It's a changing hockey landscape.
For sure.
We know there's massive changes already afoot with CHL players being allowed to play in the NCAA moving forward starting next season. With that, there's been an interesting dialogue of will the CHL sort of further encroach on the border. They've got some teams in the U.S. already. But my understanding is that the USA Hockey specifically has sent a strong message saying no more. Can you elaborate on that, and what does that mean for the relationship with Hockey Canada moving forward?
Yeah, we have a great relationship with Hockey Canada, and we're working to build a relationship with the CHL. We've never kind of really had one, right? There are 9 teams of the CHL that are based in the U.S. Historically, most have been around for 20 plus years in those markets. They do a great job in those markets. They served absolutely served the market, served those communities. And it's worked, but it's been very different because it's the Canadian Hockey League. It's not the USHL, right? So they're members, those clubs of USA Hockey. We've had a relationship through Hockey Canada, our international partners, of how we sanction those teams to play in the U.S. With this changing landscape, though, we look at our programs. We're looking internally. What do we do to react, right? And it's going to take a little time. and I know Hockey Canada, CHL, USHL, everybody recognizes that. And so for our thing, as the national governing body, we have responsibility to programs in the U.S., to players and families in the U.S., and the USHL as our Tier 1 league, and the North American Hockey League as our Tier 2 league, to say, okay, how do we make sure with the USHL, the NAHL, the NTDP, we're all working together to provide the best possible junior experience in the U.S., largely for American players. We have some foreign players in those leagues, and that's okay too. But how do we make sure we do what's best in our country for our programs and our people? And this happened, as you know, Frank, the rule technically changed in November. So we were not at all pleased with that by the NCAA. You know, we know they would never change the formula for the college football playoff series halfway through the season, right?
It's okay. They changed the rules for the rosters right in the middle of Four Nations. So, I mean, these things happen all the time. So
I'm not getting into that.
Yeah, but I said it, though.
The NCAA changed the rules in the middle of the season, so it upset all the ecosystem that's been in place for more than 50 years. So it's taken a little bit of time to say, okay, I mean, the rule that made the CHL players ineligible was put in place in the 70s. So my entire lifetime, our whole system and structure in Canada and the U.S. have been built with this as a key piece of it, of how programs are structured. So to think that we're all going to figure out what this is going to look like in 3 months, we're not. But it impacts USA Hockey, USHL, it impacts the CHL. I mean, they may have players that leave for college hockey that's never happened before, right? So how does this all fit together? And honestly, we're trying to get all of us to talk. We are talking. We're trying to talk more of, hey, how do we make this work for North America?
For everyone,
yeah,
right. And
yeah.
so...
And it's not that easy.
No, it's not at all, but because they're totally different models, right? So then the other part of this would be, because the USHL has churned out players and draft picks just as well as the CHL, and you want to continue to have that model move forward, I guess there was probably an opportunistic moment here for some U.S. teams to then jump to the CHL, and that USA Hockey has made this definitive statement, hey, we're not just, I'm just curious from a factual standpoint, just to clear it up for everyone, once USA Hockey says no and we're not going to sanction you, that's it, right? Like Hockey Canada has to respect that. Is that how it works?
Yeah, and Hockey Canada and the CHL.
And they'll respect it vice versa.
Yep. So if we want to put the way it is in the international world, right? We're all different. Hockey Canada, USA Hockey, Sweden, Finland, everybody has their own federation. They're charged from the International Ice Hockey Federation to essentially manage hockey in their country. And we have a lot of cross-border play, obviously, U.S. and Canada, so we have lots of agreements with Hockey Canada along the way, and we're tremendous partners. We want to go after each other on the ice as the fiercest adversaries. Off the ice, we work together because we're so close to each other. We need to. But it's our responsibility to sanction, which is not sanction as in penalize, sanction as in allow teams, if teams from a foreign country want to play in our country, they have to come through USA Hockey to be sanctioned to do that. Historically, we've done that with the 9 CHL teams that are here. Right now, with the changing landscape, we felt it was best interest of USA Hockey and the USHL to say, hey, listen, we're not interested in expansion of CHL teams in the U.S., so let's look at this whole overall landscape to how we can figure out how these things can work, hopefully together in the best interest of players. And and the CHL is, they do a great job, right? And no one's arguing that, but we have to figure out how this all can work together for the best interest of the game, right? We all want to produce players, we all want to provide opportunities, and obviously we're all talking on the men's side here. How do we do that? How do we make it work so that players can play junior hockey in the U.S. or Canada, have a great experience, develop, right, and then move on to the next level, whether that's college hockey or ultimately pro in the NHL. And for us, with the USHL, NTDP, North American Hockey League, development's the core of what we do, right? That's what we do at the grassroots level all the way up. So how do we continue to promote that? Because it's been successful.
That's one of the fundamental differences that I see kind of between the USHL and CHL in general. It's when players move on from the USHL, they've graduated and everyone's excited and happy. But it's almost, and I'm not slagging the CHL when I say this, but if a player were to leave the CHL and go to the NCAA, they wouldn't view that the same way. They haven't viewed it the same way. It's never happened before, but when you go somewhere else, they don't necessarily, it's not the same model. It's a business. It's not.
I don't know.
Not to say the USHL isn't a business. Franchises, values increasing, all those things are important, but it's a different style.
Well, again, let's go back. The model has been in place for more than 50 years, right? So that has never, for the USHL, their model has been bring players in, develop them, and move them on to college and then pro. CHL model has been bring players in, they play their junior career, and then they go to pro. There hasn't been the option to go to U.S. colleges to play, right? So that's a difference for them, too, that I think they're wrestling with as well, trying to get their head around it a little bit. Like, okay, we haven't had that happen. How is that going to impact us if it does happen? Because it hasn't happened in lifetimes. I mean, so it's different. It's changed for them. It's changed for us. There's pluses, there's minuses. That's why for us, we're looking at it like, okay, let's sit down for a second here. Let's kind of examine ourselves. What do we need to do? And then how does it how can all these pieces fit together for the betterment of the player?
Okay. So I'm going to pie in the sky this, okay? Because there's a need for everyone to work together and get on the same page. What about the idea of one North American Junior League where the 3 CHL leagues and the USHL are all on equal footing? Not even saying like broach the sacred ground of the Memorial Cup or anything like that, even though you could easily see them being the fourth participant.
Yeah.
Poke holes in that for me. Why wouldn't that work?
I'd say the devil would be in the details, right? I mean, the player procurement is the biggest thing, right? Where do players come from to go to those leagues? Obviously, the CHL has 3 distinct leagues that don't. It's not like Rimouski's not playing against Red Deer on Saturday night. The Western League, the Ontario League, the Quebec League. They're 3 different leagues. They're tied together with the CHL. They play the Memorial Cup. It's been tradition, success, great hockey, great development of players, all that stuff. Ours has been separate from that. So a little bit the first part would be like, where do the players come from, right? The Quebec has certain territories, Ontario has Ontario, right?
Well, we just get everyone from all 50 states.
Right. So there's some of those things, but there's been players that go north, and those are the detail challenges. I think conceptually, we all are thinking about it, right? Willing to discuss it and say, okay, then what is then what's the business part of that, right? Like, where does that affect franchises and valuations and all those sort of things, because they're just different. I'm not going to say better, worse, whatever. We all have our own opinions of, hey, we're proud supporters of USHL because that's part of USA Hockey, and they've done a great job. And they can stand up against any junior league in the world. We really believe that, and if you look at draft numbers and all that, it shows it. Yeah. So it's how do we just fit all those things, and how do we, for us, I mean, we need some more USHL teams, right? We have the player pool. Right, the North American League is expansive across the country, and they do a really, really good job at Tier 2 junior level. And Tier 1, USHL does a great job. I think we need some more opportunities for Tier 1 hockey in the U.S. So that's something I know the USHL is looking at. And NA continues to provide tons of opportunities. And as we think about this, and I know, we're talking with the 4 nations as the backdrop here, we're talking about the elite of the elite. One of the things that we look at, and I've shared this with others, is that there's a whole group of players underneath the best of the best who we serve as well. They're just as important to us. They may never play on a national team. They're hockey players, right? They're members of USA Hockey, and a lot of them have aspirations and dreams to play college hockey. Now, that may not be for the top tier of college hockey. It may be for the middle or lower level Division I programs or Division III, or in a lot of cases, the ACHA or college non-varsity programs. Those are great places, and those are the kids that we want to make sure are still a big part of this equation, because those players that play at a Williams College or play at Colby or play at at the D3 level or play at Arizona or play at
Arizona
Georgia,
State before they became D1, right? Yeah,
any of those
Georgia,
places,
look at their new arena.
Any of those places, those are players that will stay in hockey through college, hopefully then graduate, have a career, play adult league, become hockey journalists, have kids that play, coach, come back to the rink, officiate. Like, that's what makes it all go round. So the longer, for longer, and this is a Bob Mancini line. It's as long as possible, with the best as possible. As long as they can play, and if they play ACHA or they play the JV team at Brown, as long as they stay in the game, they'll come back and they'll bring their families to it, and that's what we're all about.
There's just to your point, there's just such a wider ecosystem here that everyone is still thinking just the top.
Right.
That I mean, even just to go to the NCAA level, we're going to see a dichotomy between the haves and the have-nots in programs.
Yep.
That's going to be a tough thing to wrap our brains
For
around.
sure.
Then, even in Canada, the BCHL and all these other youth sports, like there's a lot of hockey players that need to be serviced here in
Absolutely.
a good way that may also open up some new doors.
For sure.
That you could see other schools jump into the NCAA mix to join the top tier that, hey, we're getting football money, we're getting this money, we've got to spend it somewhere else. Let's elevate some programs here.
Yeah, I think they need to figure out how they're going to spend that stuff on football players and basketball players first and have some sort of
New
structure
locker
and system
rooms
that.
and, whatever.
I mean, the NCAA has a ton of challenges, and it's just it'll come down to hockey at some point.
Yeah.
But it's a tough time in college athletics, not in college hockey. College hockey is from the level of play and all that probably better than it's ever been.
It might be getting even better because now you can attract the top end Canadian talent. That's going to be you've gotten those players already. You've gotten the Owen Powers and the Celebrinis that have come through college hockey, but you might get more of them to come from junior hockey, then to NCAA, then to the NHL. That times are changing. It's an interesting time in this world in general, and you see it with everything.
For us on the men's side, just in that, it's our job ultimately to develop more players. Right? I've had this conversation with multiple people. Hey, we get it. Things are changing. There's things that we cannot control. The one thing we believe we can control and have an impact on is how many players we can develop to the highest levels, right? We can have, I think, there was a bunch of articles this week about the NTDP and the history and success. Great stuff and well-deserved, right? And well-earned by a lot of our people that developed it and do it. But now, Bob Mancini, who runs all of our hockey development programs for USA Hockey across the country, he was there at the beginning of the NTDP. And he'd say, we'd have maybe 20 guys we bring to the camp, and that was it. Because now we bring 40 guys to the tryout camp for the NTDP, and we probably could bring another 40, and the depth is legit, and that's at that level, right? And for us, that still is probably is like 5% of our playing population. So we spend a lot of time talking about the elite players, but our core business are those grassroots players. Those kids are playing. Your 10-year-old son, my kids when they play. Those kids that are hopefully going to be within hockey for their lives because they love it, that are never going to play at the Bell Center on a Saturday night, or they're never going to play on our women's team, against Canada in the rivalry series or whatever in our sled programs, all these other things. But they're going to be kids that play, and that's that's who we are and what we do. Grassroots youth sport organization.
No doubt. To that end, and this will be my second to last question. The National Developmental League or National, am I getting that right?
It's the working title, I'd say.
Okay, yeah. So this came out of your most recent winter meeting in Nashville. My eyes jumped off the page when I saw it. It sounds like it's going to be a league that's a step above Tier 1 hockey in the U.S. It's, at least according to some of the notes, 2 different age levels maybe. And, think 14, 15 range and 16, 17.
Yep.
And then you guys are going to go through a process to essentially create this league where I'm going to say you do hockey right. And not to say hockey is done wrongly, but the idea that travel is all coordinated, ice time is managed, and also in some ways restricted.
Yep.
Cost is capped, that this is going to be a very high-level league that then helps maybe transition some of these players onward and upward. But tell us more about, I guess, what we'll call the NDL. I think this is one of the most fascinating things I've heard about.
Yeah, I think, Bob Mancini made a great presentation and showed, hey, in 1996, we launched the National Senior Development Program, specifically for elite boys development, put players in the NHL, win internationally. 2009, we launched the American Development Model, which is for every player that plays hockey across the country. How do we make sure we provide the best experience possible, age appropriate, all that stuff? And now, as we get to this, and timing was, it works pretty well with what's happening in the NCAA landscape and the rule change. How do we take Tier 1 hockey, which does a really good job, and their competitive competition model is they do a lot of competition. How do we make sure there's a little bit more development? And that's what our Tier 1 operators are asking for, right? They're coming to us like, hey, this is we are traveling, we're playing a lot of games. We need to put the genie back in the bottle in a little bit in ways and make sure we're developing players even better than they are now. And for us, it's looking at some of the areas, right, at 14, 15, that critical area of player development of hey, if this kid they get a chance, play up a little bit. Maybe a 15-year-old plays down a little bit with 14s. Try and serve the players in those in those birth years and age groups, and provide a better developmental model than what's in place today, with a set number of teams and organizations. So still TBD, but we're talking 40 or less teams in these levels. That would be part of the NDL. They play against Tier 1 teams as well, but they'd follow probably a little bit stricter guidelines on, hey, off ice, on ice development, X number of games, competition.
1 weekend off a month, guaranteed.
There's a lot of.
I heard that and I was like, that is the best thing I've heard. Let these kids, be kids.
Yeah.
Have a chance to hang out with your buddies, play another sport, do something else that helps your overall development, spend time with your family, and then also limiting none of these 5 games in a weekend showcases or tournaments or whatever it might be. That it's not good for anyone.
Yeah.
These are kids still.
Yeah. No, there's the challenges of as we talked about before, like the business side of it, right, and making sure rinks are viable and have success and put a lot of business through their doors. With, hey, what's best for a kid at 14 or 15, right? How many games? 5 games in a weekend's a lot, and at the level of competition. How do we make sure we're serving the athlete and doing it in a manner where it's, we're adjusting what's in our world and our culture to make sure we again, have viable rinks, businesses to do that, because we need business partners, we need rink owners and operators, but still do the best for kids. And again, this will impact the top end, right? But ultimately, again, like I mentioned with NTDP, if you can impact this and help to push that down a little bit, and it helps the next level and then the next level, it all ties up and rolls up. And we're focused on the boys part of this, right? Or I should say the youth part, which is primarily on the boys side, because we have some challenges there, right? And we need to do a little bit. We believe we can produce more players and more elite level players by making some adjustments, and then that'll help adjust Tier 1 in positive ways too. And again, our Tier 1 operators have been involved in this process. Our affiliate presidents that manage hockey in their areas have been involved in this process, right? So it's a tough thing. There's a lot of people going, okay, how's this going to affect me and my program, and what does it do? And again,
everyone's going to be for it until they don't get a program. And then I'll just call this, what it sounds like to me is, to sum it up, hockey with sanity.
That's fair. I think it's maybe with a little more of a purpose slant towards development, right? Competition is a huge part of development, but if competition and games overweighs and you're too much, it's got to be that balance a little bit more. And it's a challenge, and I think our group is up for it. Again, we're not doing this, it's not like we're coming down from on high and here's what you all have to do. It's, hey, here's what we think is most important to develop players at 14, 15. How do we make this work in the world? And the Tier 1 operators who are in these businesses, who run these programs, who know how to do it, are saying, okay, if we do this or adjust this and we make this happen, and, because you want to have that positive experience. And again, you want to have that positive experience for those kids that are the best of the best in those ages. You also want to have that opportunity where those kids that are playing at that level that, hey, by 16, 17 might be up there, or they're just loving the hockey experience. You want to make that experience really good too.
Mm-hmm. So let's put a bow on this whole conversation. We're here in Montreal at Four Nations. We don't know the result of Saturday's game yet, but I want to take you to Thursday in Boston. You're a Massachusetts kid. What could be on the line? What would you be feeling? What would that environment be like?
I'm sure. I mean, we've seen 2 games so far here, electric, right? And obviously to go to Boston and be in front of our American fans there have a little bit more predominant red, white, and blue there versus kind of the red and white we saw here. Will be outstanding, and certainly we hope our team will be there on Thursday. And like we started with, it's time. We got to win. We got to win some of these big level tournaments. I know our players feel that, our staff feels that, our organization feels that. So if we can pull it off Thursday if we can get to Thursday in Boston, play on Thursday and pull it off Thursday in Boston, that's 15 minutes from where I grew up. I'll have plenty of friends and family in the crowd there. My mom will be there for sure. So it'd be special for our organization. Then personally, I'd feel a little Boston pride, I would say, at that place too.
What an appetizer that would be for the 2026 Olympics in Italy. Pat, thank you so much for your time. Really great conversation and chatting with you, and best of luck in the rest of the tournament.
Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it.
Man, what a conversation. So many things to sink your teeth into, so many things to think about for the long haul of USA Hockey, and Pat Kelleher is right at the center of it. Thank you to Pat for his time. I know we went a bit long, and thank you as well to USA Hockey Director of Communications, Dave Fisher, who helped line up the interview. Really appreciate everyone's effort. A busy Four Nations face-off, so many things going on and so many different people to talk to, but I think a really important conversation to have, especially if you're a stakeholder in hockey, whether you're a coach, volunteer, a youth hockey player, a college hockey player. It doesn't matter what facet of the game you touch. USA Hockey touches all those things. There's more than 1 million people around the country at all those various different things in constituencies, whether you're an official. So many different parts of it, and USA Hockey covers it all. So many things to look forward to, and as I mentioned right off the top, it certainly seems like the future is now. That'll do it for today's edition of Frankly Speaking, presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet on Betway. 19+. Please play responsibly.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.